People who were childhood friends with a now celebrity who were there and what were they like as a young person. Late to the party, but I knew Billy Joe Armstrong and the Green Day guys and the Rancid guys in their early times from my punk rock days. I did not know them well, but they were the nicest guys ever. I was standing in line with some friends at one of the sold-out shows, and Billy Joe darted out, ran up to us and said, "What are you guys doing standing in line when there's equipment to be brought in? Don't be silly." He then brought us back to their van and gave us each a cymbal, a bass drum pedal, etc. Something little we could each carry in, and jumped the line as roadies since we were old pals from early on. I ran into him backstage years later at a Weezer show. Again, I hadn't known them well, but knew them a bit before they were famous. Billy Joe came up to me, addresses me by name, and we had a nice chat. Success couldn't have come to a group of more deserving guys. I went to high school with John Heder, was a friendly guy, kinda goofy. When Napoleon Dynamite came out and became a craze, I couldn't believe it was him. Came to comment but then saw this. My brother went to high school with him too. I believe John's mom was a teacher there too. Benedict Cumberbatch in the year below me inherited my prep school blazer from the hand-me-down cupboard, my mum tells me. Not surprising, since IRC the only place you could buy them new was Harrods. Extremely pleasant fellow at 11, he was. I went to secondary school with Isaac Hempstead, right brand from God. He's always been a nice guy and glad to see he's doing well. Hasn't changed at all from what I've seen. I went to school with Chris Pratt and he was a nice guy. Was able to bounce between all the different circles or cliques. Got along with everyone. I wasn't surprised when he became famous. I lived in the same neighborhood as Eminem growing up. He was a few years older than me, but since we both kinda stand out, we ended up hanging out with the same people a few times before he got famous, though he was already locally well known. We weren't friends though. He was pretty serious and kinda seemed like a recluse, but definitely not afraid to speak his mind if he felt it necessary. Never exchanged more than "sup" though. Were you there when he laid the smackdown on Papa Doc and the leaders of the free world? My dad grew up in Massapequa town on Long Island and was best friends in elementary through high school with Jerry Seinfeld. Jerry would often jokingly call my dad the second funniest kid in school. Of course referring to himself as the funniest. Not in me, but my aunt. She knew Snoop during high school, and at the time everyone there were getting into colors. She decided to join in, tied a bandana to her arm. Later in the day he took it from her without a word. Turns out that people wearing her color were being hunted down. Overall, pretty cool dude. I hear he hasn't changed much. I went to high school with Pink. I was kind of shy, but a lot of my friends were better friends with her. She was alright. I remember her singing to herself a lot. "Hello fellow Bucks County citizen." She lives a few miles from me now. Her house and parents' house is huge. My dad went to college with Stephen Fry. Said he was one of the funniest dudes he ever met. Also my granddad went to art college with John Lennon. I unfortunately don't know if they knew each other well or not, since my granddad passed away when I was 6. I learned that they went to college together through my mother. Mike Myers went to a high school down the street from mine. We hung out with the same people. Charmingly funny and very humble. I haven't seen him for a very long time, but I do watch his interviews and he seems to be the same guy he was. I always loved it when he came on the TV wearing a Toronto Maple Leaf jersey. Happy he has done so well. He was a jokester and always good to people. Hasn't forgotten where he came from. That's endearing and rare. Went to high school with Neil Patrick Harris. He wasn't a bad dude, but wasn't humble in the least. He was still working on Doogie Howser. When he was at school, he wasn't allowed to be himself, surrounded by fans and others. He had the nickname of Drama Dork by some of the other cliques. He hasn't gone to one of the reunions. Also went with Freddie Prinze Jr. He was a cool dude, but hung out with guys that stroked his ego and bullied others. I was an unfortunate victim to that. He hasn't made it to a reunion yet either. Edit spacing for clarity. My siblings and I found some pictures the other day of our mom with John Travolta and Peter Horton hanging out on the beach and with his private jet when they were younger. Our grandma was and still is best friends with Ellen Travolta, John's older sister. Not a friend, but I knew Henry Cavill when he was a kid. He was sweet and reliable and generally a very nice person. Haven't seen him since around the era when he was taking roles in films like Hellraiser 8 because working as an actor isn't easy. Can't really imagine what it must be like to be the subject of the intense media gaze that goes with being a global celebrity. Tobias Harris went to middle school and high school with him. I was not friends with him, but it was a small high school. Everyone knew he was going to be in the NBA. From what I saw, he was the hardest working kid, very respectful, and his dad was very involved in everything basketball. Very nice family as well. Lindsay Lohan went ice skating with her when it was the cool thing to do. Would any believe me if I said she was actually normal and nice? My father-in-law went to high school with and briefly dated Gillian Anderson. He says she was really wild, your typical bad girl, but she was super sweet and genuinely a good person, so she got away with it. My mom went to college with Bo Bottomgirl, Better Call Saul guy. They were in the radio department together and apparently he was super funny. They also took shrooms together and I've been jealous of my mom ever since I heard that story. The kid who wrote the Eragon series, Christopher Paulini, went to school a ways from here. I can't say I knew him, but it's rural Montana, so I ran into him a few times since nobody lives out here. He used to show up at our school promoting his book dressed in Renaissance fair style clothing. We all thought he was kind of a geek. He's worth like 30 mil now because of a book he wrote when the rest of us were still trying to figure out who to take to prom. What's funny is that I actually recognize a few characters and places in his books as being partly based on locals and the surrounding area. Edit meant to say worth 30 mil but accidentally added an extra zero. It's been fixed. My grandma was neighbors with Al Capone. She casually told me that he would come over for coffee some mornings. House was on 72nd and Prairie. Edit update visiting over my sisters. She tells me that on Grandma's wedding day they went to a speakeasy. After a dance, back at the table was an expensive bottle of champagne with a note attached from Al. My great-grandmother was a rocket dancer in the Macy's NYC parade. She used to brag about how she went on a few dates with Frank Sinatra. My mum went to school with Portia de Rossi, Ellen DeGeneres' wife. She was a year younger than my mum and apparently a real bully. I know the Charlie bit my finger guy. He's a bit annoying. Aren't they still kids? Or teens by now?